Hello everybody and welcome to the Whiskey Dictionary, where I do the research to try to teach you a little something about what you're drinking. Every year around Thanksgiving time, even though it's a little on the nose, I like to cover something from Wild Turkey. It just kind of seems fitting. And this year is no different. I'm going to be covering the Longbranch Kentucky Straight Bourbon from Wild Turkey. When I look at Longbranch, I think about a bourbon that I have picked up off the shelf and put back so many times. And there's two reasons that I've done that. Number one, at the $40 price point, you're really starting to think about what other bourbons you could be buying, or even if you want to go over to Scotch. But let's stick bourbon. You've got things like Old Forester, Elijah Craig, Larceny, even Wild Turkey 101 that are all at a lower price point than $40. So you really start maybe questioning whether it's going to be worth the money. Then you've got the other half of it, where it's a celebrity endorsed whiskey. Now, sometimes that works out great. Blackened is a great whiskey. I actually really liked it. I thought it was kind of unique. But then you've got other ones that don't work out so well, Conor McGregor, where the whiskey did not come out quite as good as maybe the celebrity led you to believe. So when I saw that Matthew McConaughey, who is an American actor, by the way, he's been in tons of movies. If you're from around here, you probably have seen him, but if you're foreign, if you live in a different country, you might not know him. He got his breakout hit in a movie called Dazed and Confused, which is kind of a cult classic. One of my personal favorite movies of his, probably Reign of Fire, where he plays a badass with an axe and attacks a dragon. So, I mean, that's pretty awesome. So, when I see that Matthew McConaughey was co-signing this bottle of whiskey, and I know that only Eddie Russell and Jimmy Russell have ever only put their signatures on this bottle, on any bottle of Wild Turkey, I started getting a little bit worried, or at least getting some red flags. So Thanksgiving finally gave me that extra push that I needed to buy this. Now, Matthew McConaughey has been the creative director since 2016, and this came out in 2018, around April timeframe. So that's a couple years. That's not bad. It means that he's there for more than just barrel picking and saying that one's the Matthew McConaughey barrel. So if he's to be believed, if you kind of watch some of these videos that he's created and read some of the stories, even the press release, there was a point where he had been tasting all of these different whiskeys and kind of refining it using Jimmy and Eddie, and they narrowed it down. And I believe at around 2 a.m. one morning, he called up, I think it was Eddie Russell, and said, "This is the one," and that's what ended up becoming this. So interesting little story behind it, little background there. And if you take all of these men at their word, Matthew actually gives a crap about bourbon. So I'll give him that benefit. Now, this came out good. If it came out bad, I'd probably be telling a whole different kind of story. So let's talk about what actually makes this into a good whiskey. Now, this is similar in a way to the way that Tennessee whiskey does charcoal filtering. This ends up getting filtered. It's normal 8-year-old Wild Turkey, but then they filter it through white American oak, and then they also filter it through Texas mesquite wood. So that gives it a little bit of a different flavor than what you'd normally get out of Wild Turkey, but it does kind of keep the signature. Now, it is a proprietary way of filtration. However, let's be fair, Tennessee whiskey has been doing this en masse forever. So the idea of filtering stuff through charcoal is not new, but throwing the mesquite in there is a newer idea. So let's get into the nosing and tasting here, because this little thing has been sitting out in front of me for a little while and I kind of want to. All right, let's go ahead and give this a nose. So a lot of the things that you're getting out of here originally are very indicative of a bourbon. You've got corn sweetness, you've got kind of a little bit of a backing of an oak, but there is a subtle subtle smokiness there that is obviously being imparted from the charcoal. One thing that this smell actually reminds me of as well, there's apple in there, but there's all these different nosing notes working together that makes me think of apple crisp, specifically warm apple crisp. However, this has been sitting at room temperature. Maybe that's where the warm is coming from. But either way, warm apple crisp, regular bourbon notes, oak, and a little bit of subtle smoke. Let's go ahead and give it a taste. Cheers. So this is 43% ABV. The ABV comes across a little bit, but it's not too heavy. 43%, I think this is the right place for this to be. I think a little heavier, you would lose some of the nuance that I'm about to tell you about. And at 40%, I absolutely would have thought the whole thing about the celebrity just being a sellout. So the first thing that I taste in here is peach. I think this is very heavily in the peach territory, but then you follow it with a little bit of apple and some caramel to the point where it tastes like a crisp caramel apple. Now, there's a little bit of like this peppery rye spice going on there as well. And there is this overall smoothness that I really appreciate here. I don't want to, this is going to sound almost like an insult, but it's not. If you think about Gentleman Jack, and you think about how smooth that is, now that goes through the Lincoln County process, which is very similar to what this does, the filtering through charcoal. That is an extremely smooth whiskey. I would say this is right there with them. I think that filtration really does a lot of good for just generally the smoothness of a whiskey. So let's talk about the overall opinion here. I think it's pretty clear that I like this whiskey, but I do want to kind of specify what I think this is for. I think that this is an excellent whiskey to buy as a gift for somebody who might not be a huge whiskey drinker, because it's smooth enough that they will appreciate it. They're not going to take a sip and just be like, oof, I don't like whiskey. It's very smooth. This is something that I would consider stocking, and in fact, that's going to be my overall suggestion for this. I think this is worth having on hand, because I think this is great to serve to guests. This is great to drink with an ice cube. This is great to drink with some water, and this is even better to drink neat. I really, really like this whiskey. It's one that if I weren't running a YouTube channel, I would probably buy over and over and over again. So I have an idea for this whiskey. I am going to be cooking Thanksgiving dinner this year. I do it every year. I love cooking Thanksgiving dinner. And I'm going to be making this bourbon cranberry sauce. I'm going to use this. And the reason for that is that subtle smokiness mixed with the cranberry sauce, I think is going to give it a really good flavor. So I will let you guys know in another video how that comes out. But in general, this gets my rating of stock it, if not buy it. At $40, you're not going to go wrong here. So I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Whiskey Dictionary. Please check out the links in the description below. Come join me on a Discord and check out the merch I sell. But aside from that, I hope you have a great rest of your night. Cheers.